If you control the weather, you control everything. You control every food supply and literally every political system.
So what is geoengineering? Well, it's simply the manipulation of our weather by foreign agents.
Geoengineering is now defined as large-scale manipulation of the planetary environment. This is to counteract man-made climate change. This is what the Royal Society published. This is what they put out. So this is their definition, their term of geoengineering.
We have this issue, which we all have to address and is of major importance to all of us, to know that people are modifying our weather. Thus, we have to look at the facts that can be proven about what's going on in the atmosphere, about what's happening, about water vapor and its impacts, about the climate and the weather modification programs that are ongoing. These are real. The public has, relatively speaking, been kept in the dark about geoengineering, schemes, plans, global geoengineering governance, and the fact that right now, under research, anyone in the world can start conducting these experiments. So we have people artificially modifying our weather in the western states. California, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, or the city of Los Angeles. It's being modified by the Texas Weather Modification Board in Texas. Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, lots of other states are all modifying our weather and changing our climate, with extreme implications.
We believe many of them are told that what they're doing is very good for the planet, perhaps saving the planet through this climate remediation.
Do these operations exist? Absolutely. Just look at the US GCRP, or the United States Global Change Research Program. Congress has approved it. It goes up to the presidential supplemental budget. It is absolutely known that they are funding these geoengineering operations.
Our nation and many other advanced nations have been manipulating the weather for some time now. Through government white papers and even IPCC United Nations documents, we know that geoengineering is occurring.
The IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, has been meeting for various years on this subject. They have produced reports dating back from 1999 on aviation impacts on the global atmosphere from water vapor and other issues, depleting beneficial atmospheric ozone and other problems. A group of geoengineers, a clique, essentially a small clique, has decided that the answer to our global warming problems are to release particles and chemicals into the atmosphere. David Keith, Ken Caldeira, and a small group of these men affiliated with various universities have promoted this for a long time. One of the things that the geoengineering promoters, this clique, has been doing is that they have been able to keep any voices that would be in opposition to them or want to know about the impacts off the record. In other words, that they have become the experts to go to, and that the public and other people have no say. They go to meetings, they go to U.S. congressional hearings, which were held on geoengineering in 2009 and 2010, 3 of them by the U.S. House Science and Technology Committee. They also went to hearings of the UK Parliament during the same period of time to talk about global geoengineering governance and why these experiments should go forward. One of the people promoting geoengineering is Gregory Benford. One of his papers about doing experiments in the Arctic was that they could conduct these experiments, geoengineering experiments in the Arctic. The people there could live within the experiment. And if any harm came to them, it was okay to sacrifice them in that area in order to conduct this research, because the research was very important for them to do. The other thing he noted in an interview was that you could very easily take a little bit of aluminum and a little bit of barium, and you could produce these clouds and have impacts very easily in the atmosphere.
You've got to, in a sense, engineer all these so you get the right kind of clouds for the effects we want.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
You could use barium oxide, for example, which makes big fluffy clouds. You could use tiny little bits of aluminum, which is benign in the environment, and essentially manage the climate.
I was concerned about this attitude that it was okay to do this research and that we, all of us around the world, should be willing to live in their research experiment. And this is unacceptable.
Geoengineer David Keith made a statement a couple of years ago. He said geoengineering gives man godlike power. Now, I've never chased godlike power. Probably very few of the listeners, unless they're the elite who are checking this film out, have not chased godlike power, but it must be one hell of a rush. And I think what most of us can relate to is maybe a relative or a friend who became addicted to a drug. And in that drug addiction, they have put their health and their family members' health at risk in order to get the rush of that drug. What we're finding in rain tests now around the world is what people are calling the chemtrail geoengineering footprint of aluminum, barium, and strontium. These metals match a number of geoengineering patents that were actually designed to specifically spray these metals out of airplanes into the sky for the stated goal of cooling the planet. They match what geoengineers deny they're spraying but state that they want to start spraying.
If we take ground-based tests, for example, it does not prove the source of the pollution that we're finding in our soils, our air, and our water. It only tells us that something is happening which is not good, that aluminum is increasing, that barium is increasing in soil tests, water tests, and that associated problems are there. There is a belief or an opinion that the jets that leave these persistent jet contrails are spraying something into the atmosphere that would impact our health or cause other types of problems. I noticed when I started doing research in 2002 was that the trees in Mendocino County, Lake County, and other areas of Northern California were in extreme decline. It wasn't from anything we could ascertain because it was whole suites of tree species. That means redwood trees, that means oak trees, that means manzanita, that means Douglas fir. You can see how bad the health of the trees are here because, see, they don't have people in here because they're afraid these trees are going to fall on somebody. This isn't a construction area. What are they constructing? I don't see anything they're constructing. But you can see that every other one in this area, when you look up toward the top, it has so much dieback and death on it. Every tree in this area is dying or in some sort of decline. You can see right in here, this is the sign of aging and these curled up branches right here. This is all sign of that this tree wasn't in good health. It's doomed to come down at some point. If you can see the dead branches internally all along here. Every one of these trees is sick, all the way down. Technically, it's not safe to be in here because, see, this tree fell over. See right here? This tree actually fell over because once it gets so dead, they just can't stay up and they fall over. Yeah, every one of these stumps, when you were here, had a living tree on it. Declining, but a living tree. If you look at this tree right here, you can see it's dying from the inside out. If you look here, this is all dead branches. They'll just fall off eventually. Here you've got Stump City. This was all, when you were here, you could hardly see the water from here because you had all the trees. I mean, this is the most gorgeous wood, but if you notice that every angle that's exposed to the air on the top, these are dying. And you can see all the way down that what's under the underside is not impacted, but that the branches and anything exposed to the top are starting to die. So, no matter where you go on this manzanita, see here?
that the underside seems okay, but it's dying because something coming down.
And it's very pronounced.
And it's very pronounced. I mean, there is no other thing going on here with the manzanita.
It began to occur to many of us that this decline, killing our trees, is removing a beneficial asset for all of us, because the trees provide the oxygen that we breathe. They take in carbon dioxide. The trees are beneficial for maintaining stable climates. They're beneficial for watersheds, for the water we drink and the snow that comes through. All the trees that we have are assets of not only the United States, but this world. At this time, there is absolute admissions by NASA that persistent jet contrails and the man-made clouds they produce are having an impact on climate. So when NASA gets involved with the military in atmospheric releases of aluminum oxide, trimethyl aluminum, and other particulates, they know that this will have a reflective quality, that the particles will stay in the atmosphere for some period of time before they come back to Earth, and that this will reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. If we rely on the belief system that we believe this without factual proof, then we're in trouble, because everyone is going to think that we're a nutcase. And that's what the astrobiologists at NASA say about people who believe in chemtrails. They say, well, we don't have any proof, we're nutcases. And therefore, our voices are marginalized and have been since the 1990s. Starting in 1996, the U.S. Air Force declared that chemtrails was a hoax. The EPA, all of our government agencies had declared that it was an internet hoax, a conspiracy theory. And thus, since I can't define the word chemtrails, as there's no definition legally except hoax, I declined to use this term because it would marginalize my voice and the voices of those using it. The one thing we know and can prove is that rocket programs and atmospheric releases from rockets from the military and NASA and other agencies are releasing particles and chemicals into the atmosphere which can have negative effects on us. Some of the same that are said to be released by jets leaving persistent jet contrails.
Well, the Air Force has been wanting to control the weather for some time. In fact, they wanted to force multiply storms. They wanted to be able to create droughts, create rainfall. Rainfall didn't exist. In fact, in Bosnia, when they were doing the war in Bosnia, they were actually seeding the clouds so that there would be no fog in the area.
There's a military document called Owning the Weather by 2025. That's an expressed interest of our military. Aerosols are required to corporatize and control our weather. What we see in the sky on a regular basis, these long white trails that do not dissipate, they actually form artificial clouds and block the sun, is an expressed goal of geoengineers.
Aerosols are discussed in these papers time and time again. So what are these aerosols?
They talk about how they need to spray these metal particulates less than 2 microns in diameter into our upper atmosphere to shield us from radiation, and this is supposed to be good for us.
David Keith talked about using aluminum oxide to be released by small airplanes or jets, and he talked about having to use water vapor as the medium, whereby an aluminum oxide gas could be sprayed into the water vapor produced by jets, and that the rate of flow, by controlling it, they could control the size of the particles. And the smaller the particle size in controlling this process, the longer these particles would remain in the atmosphere.
The metal particulate, which are nanoparticles, they act as what's called cloud condensation nuclei. So when they're introduced into the atmosphere, instead of water, when it evaporates, condensing and forming as clouds, it will actually condense on this metal particulate, and instead of falling as rain, it drifts.
One of the most interesting interviews I've ever conducted was with an actual chemtrail whistleblower. Now this whistleblower wouldn't come forward and do another interview for this film that you're watching right now because they were threatened.
I was not an employee, I was a
civilian contractor for Evergreen Air Services there in Marana. And while I was there, I had several different job descriptions. The first of which was a civilian aircraft, and it was outfitted as a civilian aircraft, 727-200 series, in which repairs were effected to the 727 structural overhaul. Evergreen prefers to hire ex-military personnel. They do not like civilians working there en masse. The only time that they bring in civilians is when they're in a pinch for personnel that are capable, or if they are in a pinch for people with certain expertise above and beyond their standard personnel that are there. While I was there in 1991, the main and large issue that was going on there is that Evergreen had a contract with NASA with an issue of the NASA 747 space shuttle carriers. I was one of the individuals working in the sheet metal shop that received parts off of those aircraft, performed the repairs, and then sent them out with the ex-military personnel to reinstall them on the aircraft. Did work on 727s there, which were the 727s were in fact civilian-seated non-cargo aircraft used for transporting people. During that time, there were 5 747s, of which I was a crew member, a maintenance crew member, which retrofitted 5 cargo 747s. The cargo bays were retrofitted, overhauled, repaired with liquid storage tanks with capabilities of discharge. Now, how many of them they did after I left, how many of them they did before I was there, I don't know. But I do know for a fact that 5 of them were done during my tenure there in that 3 months that I was there. I have spoke with people and other employees and contractors that have worked there, that they had seen and witnessed all kinds of nefarious activities over the years. I worked there for that 1 3-month period, and quite frankly, I have no desire to return.
At night, those aerosols act as a blanket and they trap heat and actually exacerbate global warming. We've seen a great increase in nighttime highs since these programs have really been ramped up in the past 10 to 15 years.
We know from research recently conducted by Stanford Studies and earlier research by NASA that persistent jet contrails change our climate and are warming areas now like the Arctic and Alaska, and that aviation impacts, because water vapor is a greenhouse gas, is beginning to increase these temperatures each year dramatically over time. The issue becomes for all of us with water vapor is that it's a greenhouse gas, it's one of the major players in warming, and the jets producing the man-made clouds, according to NASA, are increasing warming. The powers that be do not want to talk about water vapor and its impacts because we could take care of that problem right now very easily by putting restrictions on the amount of water vapor that aviation produces. The small click is not offset with anyone talking about the impacts that these programs would have on air pollution, water pollution, crop production, the reduction of direct sunlight reaching the earth on human health, the reduction of direct sunlight on solar panel power production.
A big concern of ours is this: geoengineering programs shred our ozone. Geoengineers are very open about this. Anytime you put particulate aerosols into our atmosphere, it will affect the ozone. We now have a major ozone hole over the northern hemisphere.
The chain reaction that occurs begins to reduce the amount of direct sunlight and can reduce photosynthesis, which all crops, trees, plants, and everything need to survive.
We now have an issue called global dimming. The Earth is now receiving 20% less sun than it did just a couple of decades ago. So it's of great concern. There's nothing left untouched on the planet that this does not affect.
This is referred to in these documents as SRM, or Solar Radiation Management. And what does solar radiation management mean? It means blocking the sun.
The USDA estimate that crop loss in 2030 will double due to abiotic stress. What is abiotic stress? Abiotic stress is everything that chemtrail geoengineering programs create. It's the drought conditions, it's heavy metal contamination, it's too much moisture, it's also fungal overgrowth. Because our sun is blocked, we have an overgrowth in fungus, which is destroying a lot of our crop.
More molds, mildews, fungus, and pests are able to proliferate because of the warmer temperatures at night caused by the man-made cloud cover produced by the jets.
Geoengineers are very open about the fact that geoengineering creates drought. And if you look at the global drought monitor, most of the world now is in drought. Geoengineers state that geoengineering will create droughts in Africa and Asia. Guess what? We have droughts in Africa and Asia. Every day they spray, they are destroying our protective layer. And again, no ozone, no life on the planet. Many people now are beginning to notice that they burn very quickly when they go out into the sun. The reason for that, again, is our protective layer is being shredded every day. No protective layer, no life on this planet.
These experiments, and with global weather patterns and with jet streams and all kinds of things, can get out of hand and can have impacts on people worldwide.
And they're actually terraforming our planet. That's right, they're terraforming our planet. They're changing the very environment that we live in, and they're making it hard for humans to live in this atmosphere, hard for our plants to live, hard for our animals to live. We are not going to have a future. This is a big issue.
Yes, we can geoengineer our atmosphere, but we're also working on geoengineering the oceans with ocean iron fertilization program, which was and has been initiated to show that it's not successful and causes harm to our oceans.
We're seeing the ramifications of this geoengineering in our everyday lives. We're seeing soil being polluted with the agents that are being sprayed: barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium.
Now what happens is when the chemtrails start to descend upon the earth, it oxidizes into what's known as aluminum oxide. This acidifies the soil, devastating crops, water. It can go in and actually make so fish can't take oxygen from the water anymore. This causes them, of course, to die. And we also have research from New Jersey that shows that not only full-grown plants, but seedlings are devastated by this as well.
Aluminum in soils is not good for tree health because aluminum gets into the tree roots, and then it prevents the trees from uptaking enough moisture, water, and nutrients to survive. And so it looks like the trees are dying because of lack of water and drought, when in reality, once aluminum is into the root system, they can be dying because they can't uptake the natural things that they need, nutrients and water, in order to survive. The Texas Weather Modification Board has authorized the use of sea salt as a particulate that's used. Well, every time those clouds rain out after they have been seeded with salt, salt reaches the earth. And it's going to have its impact on freshwater systems, marine life, agriculture, crop production, because the more salt in the soil you have, the less productive it becomes.
Through the sterilization of our soils and thus the destruction of our crops, natural organic farmers are now having a difficult time growing natural organic food.
I mean, we have percolate in the vegetables. We have all kinds of things going on, rocket fuel, gas, all these horrible contaminants, and I can tell you it's from what they're doing in the sky.
The chain reaction that takes place will reduce the amount of food that the earth can provide for us, because it changes the soil, changes the pH, and reduces the power generation that plants need, photosynthesis, for growing tall and strong.
The concern for many of us is that if these programs continue, we will not be able to grow anything naturally unless it's a Monsanto abiotic stress resistant genetically modified seed. A number of these crops are what are called terminator seeds. They do not regenerate. So year after year after year, the farmer has to go back to Monsanto, which literally puts the farmers in complete debt. The farmers that are not able to recoup their losses due to the flooding, due to the drought this summer, now are selling their crops for pennies on the dollar. There's a company that's owned by George Soros now that is buying up that property, again at pennies on the dollar. That's an objective of Agenda 21. Once these entities have complete control, they can literally control what crops grow, how much grows, how many people get food. These are natural systems. But through the death and destruction of our natural systems, they come in with their solution, which is genetic modification. And in that genetic modification, they literally usurp the authority of nature or the authority of God, and they bring it under the authority of corporations. The sun drives life here on our planet. We need vitamin D3, which nourishes us, produces certain hormones. Vitamin D deficiency is something that's very common now.
It reduces the amount of direct sunlight that hits our skin when we're outdoors, causing a lack of vitamin D in humans. This lack of vitamin D from this man-made cloud cover and these reflective particles leads to human health problems which are already being identified in the United States. One of them in recent years has been the advance of rickets, which is almost an epidemic proportion. Not since the time when children were forced to work in coal mines at the turn of the century, instead of going to school and being outdoors during the day, have we seen an epidemic of rickets like is occurring across the United States at this time.
We have aluminum, which we know is linked to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, other neurological disorders.
We have seen aluminum-related illnesses go through the roof in Riverside County. We've had over 260% increase. We have autism, ADD, and again, Alzheimer's, all going through the roof.
I came to the conclusion that aluminum-coated fiberglass, or chaff particulates, were used by the ton and released worldwide by the ton for many, many years. These particulates stay in the atmosphere for approximately 20 hours, more or less.
Aluminum, according to the physicians that we've spoken to, actually builds up in the body, so it will accumulate, and if it's not flushed out or chelated, it will compromise the health of an individual. Barium compromises our immune system.
What this means is that after barium exposure, you're actually more prone to virtually all diseases across the board.
We have seen respiratory mortality go from number 8 down to number 3 in the past 6 years. The day-to-day breathing in of these heavy metals will impact our health in a very negative way, leading to cancers and a number of other illnesses.
We do know from studies that putting sulfur up means that it's going to come back down. And in the state of California, it is noted that sulfur can cause reproductive toxicity. And the state of California is required by law to notify the public of any chemicals that can cause cancer or reproductive toxicity, and sulfur is definitely on this list. So these programs are dangerous to us and should be controlled, and the public should be more informed, and that no individual corporation should be able to conduct these programs without public oversight and public consent. And this is a major issue that we're going to be facing in the future more and more.
We're headed up to Mojave County, Golden Valley, Arizona right now. We're going to meet Alde Chico. This guy has had blood tests done. He's actually found toxins in his blood. He believes it's related to chemtrail activity. We're going to go follow up with him and see exactly, his side of everything and why he thinks he's being poisoned from these chemtrails, and if Mojave County, in fact, is some type of heavy spray area.
My name's Al DeChico, and I live in Golden Valley, Arizona, which is in Mojave County. And I'm here, or you're here, for me to tell you a little bit about what happened in regards to toxins in the rain here and in many people's blood. people weren't feeling well. I wasn't feeling real well. I was having symptoms of respiratory irritation and almost failure, heart palpitations, a lot of sinus problems, a lot of coughing, a lot of mucus, just really gross, you know.
About 2 years ago, a friend of mine, Mr. DiCicco, he started to tell me about he didn't feel well. He had problem with respiration, and I realized I wasn't feeling well either myself. I am 44 now, I was 42 about then, and I'm pretty healthy. I do not eat any processed food, I grow my own food, I drink water from my own well. The last 6 years since I moved to Arizona, I really live some sort of very natural, simple life. So I didn't understand why my health was starting to get weird.
So I went to the doctor. It was on a day when we were getting bombarded in Kingman up here with a lot of jet traffic and crisscrosses all over the sky, spreading out into haze. And I walked into the doctor's office, pointed up at the sky. I said, "You see this? Rumor has it that this is barium, strontium, and aluminum, and I want to get tested for it." And the doctor that I was seeing at the time, she was very good. And she said, "Sure, no problem." She wrote the order. I had it tested, and it came back really high.
So I started to notice and learn that our sky was different. And it doesn't take to be a genius or to be a PH. You see airplanes that make no sense, especially because there is a pattern that was really out of control. Just to let you know, some days here, we really rarely see few planes. They're really high altitude, they don't leave no trails, especially because, you know, there is not really much of humidity here. We're high desert, about 3,500 feet. Some days we really cannot even see the blue of the sky because there are so many planes that they create like a fog.
And I had heard of geoengineering and chemtrails in the late 90s, but didn't really pay much attention to it.
For example, I forget things. I realized that during the day when they spray, I forget things. I cannot even remember sometime my name. I mean, seriously, stuff I was laughing at myself. I don't remember where I left my keys. So I started to document myself. Alan, my wife, called me and he said, "Listen, you gotta do this blood test." I just did it for the barium. I didn't even know what was barium, but me and my wife, we did a barium test, and also the aluminum. Bottom line, we had levels above, at least 800% above what's supposed to be the maximum recommended by the lab test.
What came back was very high barium, 190. Let's see, reporting limit is 11. 11, and that was 190.
We went to our local doctor. Of course, he has no idea, so he put it on record. These levels, they're not what a normal person is supposed to have. And yes, they can be deleterious for your health, can be dangerous. Me and my wife, after we received the result of this blood test, we started to be really concerned. After little research, yes, I had all the symptoms of barium intoxication.
Back in 2011, in July is when I did the rain and my first blood test. The rain showed aluminum very high, 321, barium 7.4, strontium 5.5. I retested again January 2012. The strontium was very high, 35, with, let's see, strontium is supposed to be 11. Reporting limit is 11. It's now 40. I was retested here in July.
We tried to find, first of all, a solution. The solution, we wanted to see if it was just us, me, Alan, and my wife, or somebody else. We started to have a pool of people, about 20 people, and we really encouraged them to go to do their blood test. These people, they live in different areas between Golden Valley, Kingman, Bullhead, some also in Phoenix, some also in Texas, okay? As I said, we have about 20 people, and about 90% came back with a very high levels of barium or aluminum.
It's really irritating because I've testified to the health department here, to the board of supervisors. We've been in touch with the governor's office, and nobody wants to do anything as far as really determining where these toxins are coming from.
I'm here mainly to talk about what's in my blood and what's in the blood of 20 people. For your information, geoengineering, also known as chemtrail, is taking place globally, and there are millions of people, scientists, doctors, that know what's going on. Has anybody been looking at the skies here today? Because it went from clear blue for many days, and now we've got crisscrosses all over the sky. My barium was 150 in February. Now it's 190. I also have low blood platelets, which is a problem with clotting, okay? I also have rainwater. If anybody would like to volunteer to drink some. Anybody want to drink some rainwater? It has aluminum in it. And I'm going to tell you how much it has in it. 321 parts per billion, 7.4 for barium, and 5.5 for strontium. Trevor Bajori of the Department of Environmental Quality says this is safe to drink. Anybody want to drink some? I don't. I stay at home. I am disabled and getting more disabled because of what is in our atmosphere.
Excuse me, sir, but your time's up.
Well, extend it. You can extend it. Okay, she spoke for 20 minutes with a high school chemistry class. There's a lot more information out there than that. This is terrible, and you are all being affected by this, and you better wake up, look up, and realize what's being dumped upon us. This is for real. Our own government, the United Nations, is making us sick, and you better wake up. Thanks for the extra time, okay?
Thank you.
I want some answers in writing.
Thank you.
A lot of people like to say, well, no, it's not from chemtrails, it's not from air traffic. If that's the case, fine. Where are the toxins coming from? We need to know this. All of us need to know this because it's in our blood. It's in your kid's blood. It's in your blood. It's in your hair. It's in your bones.
The point is we all live in different households. We live in different parts of the county. Some live also in different parts of the state. We have a couple from Phoenix. We drink different water because the first thing they were trying to throw at us, oh, it's in the water. I did immediately a test. I paid out of my own pocket to see my water if there was any barium. The water is completely clean. No barium at all.
The health department put on a little dog and pony show here locally, trying to, in my opinion, placate the public and try and explain where barium might come from, other sources like Brazil nuts, which I don't eat.
The county tried to discredit us, say, okay, this is in some sort of a magic food, like nuts from Brazil or stuff like that. Come on. First of all, I eat my own food, I grow my own food, and we all eat from different households. We don't live in a commune, okay? So forget the food. I'm not surprised. I mean, let's look at the history. In the last 100 years, it's been proven and completely declassified information. They've been experimenting on people without their consent or will or knowledge. So let's not try to say, oh, my government will never do that. They already done it. Now the point is what they're going to do next.
This next story is so unbelievable, we didn't think it could possibly be true. But after receiving thousands of records and declassified reports from the Army, it's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
Lisa Martino-Taylor's life work has been to uncover details of the Army's ultra-secret military experiments carried out in St. Louis and other cities during the 1950s and 60s.
This study was secretive for a reason. They didn't have volunteers stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll breathe zinc cadmium sulfide with radioactive particles.
These Army archive pictures show how the tests were done in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1960s. In Texas, planes were used to drop the chemical, but in St. Louis, the Army placed chemical sprayers on buildings and station wagons. City officials were kept in the dark about the tests. The Cold War cover story was that the Army was testing smoke screens to protect cities from a Russian attack. The truth, according to Martino-Taylor, was much more sinister.
After enough time goes by, the truth either gets completely hidden or it gets exposed, but still nobody does anything about it.
Profiteering, greed, are these some of the motives? Some might say so.
Since the 1990s, people have been able to bet on the weather. Now, climate means overall worldwide weather due to the jet streams, due to different influencing factors. Weather, on the other hand, is a local event. Weather modification programs are initiated by utilities, cities, counties, states, private individuals. Anyone can modify the weather, just like when Hurricane Sandy came about. People know there's going to be damage in a certain area, and they can bet on that damage, and they can make millions. It's $1 billion worldwide industry, so that right now I could hire a weather modification company if I had the money and the inclination. I could have them enhance snow in some area. of the United States. And when I did that, the Weather Modification Company and myself could bet that there would be increased snow in that area during the time of our program, and thus I would make money.
By the way, Bill Gates now, on public record, is a funder into geoengineering programs. He is also a heavy investor in Monsanto.
There is a line of research on what's called geoengineering, which are various techniques that would delay the heating to buy us 20 or 30 years to get our act together.
Bill Gates of Microsoft has been funding cloud whitening experiments using salt particles to see clouds, to brighten them so that it would reflect more direct sunlight back to outer space. The Earth would receive less direct sunlight. But is he consulting with us when those clouds, water rains out and the particulates are salt? Is he responsible then when our rivers and our streams are salted up because of this endeavor to have these type of particulates in our cloud for cloud seeding and cloud whitening purposes?
What may surprise you as well is that Bill Gates actually owns 500,000 shares of biotech corporation Monsanto, the 90+% owner of genetically modified seeds in the United States market.
He benefits on the back end through his investment on Monsanto. It's the Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution. Monsanto comes in and they have patented a seed that addresses abiotic stress, and it's a seed that covers everything from apples to zucchini.
When I moved out here, shortly afterwards I put in some irrigation with a friend, and I started growing some watermelons, and they grew effortlessly. Just put the seeds right in the soil, the native soil, and they just grew prolifically all over the place. We had probably 25, 30 watermelons for about 3 years, and about 4 or 5 years ago it just stopped. That was it. No more watermelon. Tomatoes wouldn't grow. I'm pretty sure the soil has some problems. Sorry, can't grow watermelons anymore. Can't grow artichokes no more. Your chicken's feathers are coming out.
When most people think of Bill Gates, they think of Microsoft, they think of Windows, they think of the Xbox. They think of a man who has pioneered technology into our living rooms. However, there's yet another side to Bill Gates.
Bill Gates never get into politics, never talk about politics, nothing. He was just in the field of computer. But suddenly something happened that the Congress threatened to break down Microsoft in several pieces. Oh, Bill Gates, the richest man in the United States, was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but he saw the writing on the wall, and then he joined the Council on Foreign Relations, and just then the Congress said, well, we are not going to break down Microsoft.
Bill Gates wields great power through his investments. In the realm of entertainment, you have Comcast, the Xbox, and the Windows Phone. In energy and technology, you have ExxonMobil, Ecolab, Devon Energy, and Cabot Oil and Gas. In banking, you have Goldman Sachs, M&T Bank, and Berkshire Hathaway. And in the field of food, you have McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Diamond Foods, Walmart, and even Monsanto.
One of the ways that's been suggested to fund these schemes is through a carbon tax. This carbon tax means that anybody releasing CO2 would have to pay or purchase credits in order to keep releasing CO2, and that the funding mechanism would then go toward the deficit or go toward various things that would apparently or supposedly save us from climate change and global warming.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the Foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds. We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got to thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. We do need the market incentives, CO2 tax, cap and trade, something that gets that price signal out there.
Well, this is a problem because no one is talking about how these funds are to be spent, who gets the money that is collected. The carbon tax levied against people who emit CO2 would be against agriculture, energy companies, different type of people that provide power and energy or food for us. And they won't pay the costs. They're going to transfer the costs to us in the form of higher energy. They're going to transfer the cost to us in the form of a tax on us, all the people of the United States, if this is passed. Nobody is discussing the solutions. Everyone is discussing what the funding mechanism will be for various solutions which may not change the climate at all or damage the environment we live in. And so this scheme that is going on, whether it's cap and trade or whether it's a carbon tax, is merely a charade, and it doesn't offer any solutions to the weather events that we're seeing, nor does it address the ongoing weather modification programs, which NOAA lists in their documents.
It's government control of everything in our lives. Everything from the cereal you eat, everything to the air you breathe, how many times you flush your toilet. It's everything. And that's what they're trying to do, is micromanage how we live, who lives, where we live, what we eat, what we breathe, what we drink.